And over the years, I'm sorry, I've battled doubt, frustration, fear, and anxiety. I've lived with not having the answers. Even worse, I've also been in a place where I didn't know what path to take to find the answers I so desperately sought. For those of who have lived in a stressful or dysfunctional family, I also know what that's like. Later in this book, I'm going to tell you about the personal challenges I faced being raised by a Catholic father who was also my hero, and how that impacted my self-esteem. In fact, one of the reasons I've become a professional in learning how to grow is because I'm such in a far place from which to come. The truth is, I needed to learn how to grow so I could simply function to reach the baseline. The good coming from all of this is that it reinforced my belief people can dramatically change their lives. I saw it firsthand from watching how much my father changed over the years. I also wrote The Power of One More because after years and the years of struggling and the trial and error, I learned what it takes to succeed in life. I paid their price, but I now know what many of answers and what it takes to win. Along the way, I've also watched the good friends and business associates in teens. What they think is fun at the expense of winning. Sadly, they become distracted and they lose sight of just how good winning feels. Then they spend a lot more time and the energy trying to get a place they could have been already. When I first started out, I often set fun aside in favor of winning. The ironic thing is, it didn't take long before I figured out that winning is fun. In fact, one of the quotes I'm best known for this: winning is more fun than fun is fun. When you are finished reading this book, hopefully you will think so too. I've been living by these principles for 30 years, applying what I've learned to design my best life. My goal for The Power of One More is to help you identify your talents, gifts, and abilities, then maximize them for your own greater good and for the people around you. Many self-improvement and performance books I read say the same thing over and over. I don't know about you, but I lose interest after a couple of chapters. I purposely set out to make The Power of One More different in that respect. The strategies and philosophies I'm going to share with you are unique unto themselves. The Power of One More teaches you to combine your gifts with directed, intentional thoughts and focused actions. That gives and resources you need to produce the standards, goals, and the outcomes you deserve. Every one of the principles I share in these pages has worked for me beyond my wildest dreams. I'm also humbled and aware that I've been gifted with a certain amount of luck and the God's blessings. You have your own version of these same gifts as well, but like me, you also needed to put in the work and keep an open mind when it comes to making change in your life. In many cases, those changes won't be easy at first. In fact, the more further you go and the more changes you go through to reach it, the more resistance you will encounter. Expect that, plan for it. When you put yourself in the right frame of mind and you're mentally tough, You're succeeding more often than you otherwise would. The power of one more is the product of years upon years of how I lived, grown, and changed my life to produce wealth, happiness, and the meaningful relationships with people I care about deeply. Mm. I want to share the lessons I've learned with you so that you can lead your best life too. Approach the power of one more like a key that will unlock your mind, and you may be surprised how one more thought and one more action would change your life forever. Remember, we are a lot alike, and you and me. If I can do it, you can too. One more identity. They always say time, they always say time changes things, but you actually have to change them yourself. In many ways, reshaping your identity is the most fundamental concept of what it means to be a woman thinker and a doer. Your identity is a powerful and influential driver that governs outcomes in all parts of your life. Identity defines the limits of your success, finances, and achievements. It controls the quality of your emotions, relationships, and self-worth. What exactly is identity? I define it as the thoughts, concepts, and beliefs we hold as the most genuine parts of our inner being. You can put on a face or act a certain way for the rest of the world, but you can lie to yourself when it comes to these things. Deep inside, you know what's true about you. Put another way, identity is this. What we perceive about ourselves is what we believe about ourselves. Put another way, identity is what we perceive about ourselves is what we believe about ourselves. Here's the paradox about identity. Many people know they could improve their lives significantly if they changed their identity. However, many people aren't willing to take the necessary steps, even when it's in their own best interests. Are you willing to sacrifice who you are for who you could be? The answer should be the resounding yes. That's the logical conclusion, and that sounds obvious. So it's a mystery why lots of people struggle with their fundamental question. You weren't put on this earth to be a bomb on a log, or a lump of the coal and the ground. Your mission is to keep growing, expanding, and learning to lead a full and a happy life. When you do these things, your identity will change. Identity is so important because it unlocks so many other amazing things in your life. When you create a one more identity, you give yourself the gift of taking control by dictating internal messages instead of being governed by external forces that have been determining your happiness, possibly since the day you were born. Your identity is shaped early in childhood. As a child, you are a blank canvas. You are impressionable, happy, and accepting. You had no reason to believe the external world was out to hurt you in any way. Gradually, you learn to function in the world based on what you were taught by your parents, family members, and friends, and teachers and others with whom you came in contact. Of course, many people were well intentioned. However, that doesn't mean what they taught you was always right. The fact is, nobody is ever always right. Nobody is ever always right. Nobody is ever always right. As a child, you accepted much of what you were all told, right or wrong. Your identity became the good and the bad parts of how other people influence you. The unfortunate thing is that you were defenseless. Your critical thinking skills did not exist and gave you the tools you needed to survive in the world. As you grew older, you began to conform your identity. If someone said you weren't a good student or a lousy athlete, that became a part of your identity. You still didn't have the capacity to disable what you were being told. You grew into adulthood, and you carried with you these beliefs about yourself. Your identity had taken root. Your limitations became a part of you, and because they were so ingrained and you weren't even sure where they came from. There's a lot of baggage locked around, isn't it? By the time you are old enough and able to question your identity, you are living with the identity you had adopted at the time when you didn't have a choice. Of course, this assumes you're even aware of how your identity impacts you. Many people simply go through life screwed up and unsuccessful and never quite knowing why. However, as a woman thinker, you are now aware and you can change your identity once you become intentional about it. Here's how. Adjusting your identity thermostat. Okay, I've touched briefly on your identity thermostat in the past, but now I want to give you more details on how this concept can work on your behalf. Your identity is the force that governs your life and regulates your results. Think of it like a thermostat. Your internal thermostat sets and conditions of your life. You walk into a room, and if it's too hot or too cold, you look for a thermostat to adjust and temperature to what you like. It doesn't matter what the external conditions are. The temperatures can be 100 degrees outside, but if your thermostat is set for 75 degrees, it kicks on, and the air conditioner cools down the temperature and regulates the environment. The same applies when it's 30 degrees outside, the thermostat kicks in and warms your surrounding to 75 degrees. Your life works exactly the same way. If you're in 75-degree person, you turn on the air conditioners of your life and cool it back down and what you think you're worth. This is what happens every time your results begin to exceed your identity. You unconsciously turn on the air conditioners of your life, and cool it back down to what you believe you deserve. Much like a thermostat, your identity regulates your internal self-worth. It regulates your actions and results. Many people are under the false assumption the external factors are what regulates your thermostat. They believe that in getting promotion, getting married to the love of your life, or getting advanced degree from college determines their identity. If you don't raise your identity, then eventually you will turn the air conditioner of your life on sooner or later, and that temperature will drop back down to 75 degrees or some other setting you don't want, simply because you didn't take a change and decide what identity you wanted. However, if your thermostat is set the right way, it will transcend conditions, and you will find the success no matter what the external conditions are. The truth is that you can acquire all the talents, skills, and abilities you want, but until they align with your identity, you will fall short of goals you've set. That applies across the board. For example, think about your fitness identity. Let's just suppose you lost 20 pounds at one time in your life. Despite it being armed with being weight loss recipes and workout regimens, a year later you added all the weight back on and you are where you started. Really? That's because when your fitness identity thermostat is set at 75 degrees, it means you're comfortable carrying 20 extra pounds and try as you might, you'll always drift back to the 75-degree setting. You can take all the right actions with the diet and exercise, but if your internal thermostat is not set for success and it remains at the 75 degrees, eventually you will drift back to your old thermostat setting by eating the wrong food and falling out of the solid workout regimen. You will use external circumstances to find ways to cool you back down to what your internal circumstances believe you're worth. Here's another example. Maybe you're doing well financially, but you can't seem to get to the next level of wealth you think you deserve. You may want $10 million in the bank. However, until you turn up to your thermostat to believe your identity is worth $10 million, even if you make that much money, your thermostat will eventually cool you off to what your identity believes you are worth. It may take a few years, but eventually, unless you change the internal thermostat, you will start experiencing financial setbacks. Chances are these types of situations and many others are something you've experienced. There is no shortage of information, coaching, or paths to success in any part of your life. So it follows the barriers to success and are found inside of you. That is why you can do all the right things and still not get the results you wanted. Remember this key point. Unconsciously, we always find a way to get back to whether our thermostat is set based on what we think we are worth. Simply put, you can achieve 100 degrees of fitness or wealth with a thermostat set for 75 degrees of fitness or wealth. Your thermostat boxes it in until you can create a new identity that triggers growth and change. This isn't say that you can achieve success because you will in many cases. However, unless you adjust your identity down the road, your thermostat will bring you back to where your identity is set. Typically, most people blame external forces when this happens. Do these examples sound familiar? If your thermostat isn't set high enough, you will see these as coincidences and karma and bad luck that are conspired against you, but that's not what they are. If your thermostat is set high enough, these are the little more than temporary setbacks. However, the difference between you and one more person and everyone else is that you will build these speed bumps on the road of your goals. You want to use the temporary setbacks as an excuse to create permanent failures. You will have the grit to take the gravity to where your thermostat is set, and eventually you will raise to that thermostat. Remember, as in a one more person, change comes from thinking and acting. This book is not about you doing one thing or the other. You must do them in unison. Oh, okay. When you think and act in congruency, you don't cool your thermostat back down. Instead, you're best in a position to no, you're best positioned to turn your thermostat up to achieve the results you deserve.